Hello, everybody.
Hello!
Hi. My name is Jasmine Walker. I live here in Squamish. I've lived here for 2 years. I don't really do anything here. I'm pretty antisocial, so I don't really see anybody. But
Woo!
yeah, I mean, I had a whole thing planned, and I just got really emotional listening to Jamar. And it means a lot to see that so many people have come out to support this cause when it, doesn't directly affect you.
We love you!
So, yeah, we'll see if I can get through this without crying too much. So, like Jamar, I am also biracial. I am half black, half white. Growing up as somebody who is biracial, you do struggle with your racial identity growing up. I remember, never wanting to offend my mother and identifying as just black, and I didn't want to offend my father by identifying as white either. So where am I left, Like, when you do those the census things when you're in elementary school and you've got to pick a race, I don't know what little square to check. I'm like shaking.
Woo!
I felt like I could never, I felt like I didn't really belong into one specific box, and it just never really sat well with me. On top of that, kind of growing up, I don't know if anybody here knows what colorism is, but it's basically racism within your own race. So you've got dark-skinned black people against light-skinned black people, you've got dark-skinned Asians against white-skinned Asians, and it doesn't really matter what situation you're in, like, no matter what, you don't feel like you belong to any race, especially when you're the light one. The dark ones reject you. They say you're not black enough, like, you don't belong with us. White people just see a black person, so I'm not considered white either. So we're really just kind of alone, drifting by ourselves, not really sure who we belong to. Growing up, I would hear, comments from my black family saying things like, stay out of the sun, you'll ruin your complexion. Parents, yeah.
Shame.
People talking to my parents saying, wow, you're so lucky, she's so light.
Shame.
She's so fair, she's beautiful. Imagine if she had green eyes.
Shame.
It's like a really disgusting thing because from such a young age, I've just, been raised around this looming dark thing where I'm being told in these little microaggressions that, being dark-skinned isn't beautiful. That's not the case at all. It's kind of gotten to a point where you look at the media, like, I'm fortunate, I'm glad that, in 2020, 2019, 2018, we're starting to see more diversity in the media, but realistically, the media portrays skinny, white men and women as the beauty standard.
Shame.
So the skin lightening industry worldwide is $23 billion industry.
Shame.
That doesn't affect just places like North America. Countries like Korea, Malaysia, the Philippines, 50% of their population is using skin lightening cream.
Shame.
India, 60%. Nigeria, a black country, 77%.
Shame.
There's this deep-seated hatred about having dark skin, and it's just such a horrible, disgusting thing. Institutionally, yeah, it is messed up. I've heard stories from my father and my grandmother. My dad, I liked to call midnight in a tunnel. He's just very, very dark. My mom, white as a Kleenex, super pale. And then, I'm myself. But I would hear stories from my father and my grandmother about how my own great-grandmother in Jamaica was guilty of colorism. She would favor her fair-skinned children over my grandmother because she was so dark.
Shame.
She would favor my auntie, who is a similar complexion to me despite having two full black parents, over my father, who, again, was extremely dark. I began rejecting my blackness. When people would say I'm black, I'd get frustrated and say, no, I'm not, I'm tan. I'm tan.
Shame.
It got to a point where Dad had to sit me down and have this conversation with me, and these words will resonate with me for the rest of my life. I remember at that moment realizing that I am a black person. Dad said, even though you're half black and half white, no one will ever see you for your whiteness. You will always be, in the eyes of everyone else, a black woman. At my international school in Holland, the American girls wouldn't let me play with them.
Shame.
They said I wasn't black enough, and I couldn't understand what they meant. When I moved to a small town in northern Ontario, everybody in that town had known each other basically since birth. Their parents, born and raised, had their kids, generations of families, white families. Everyone knew each other. I was the only kid there who was half black, half white. There was one other kid, and she was half black, half First Nations, and she was a lot lighter than I was, so I was the black kid. In high school, I would hear my parents would never let me date a black chick. You're hot for a black chick.
Shame.
I heard the N-word thousands of times.
Shame.
And I never felt like I could stand up to it. I didn't have a community. I didn't have anybody who I felt that I could rely on to give me the support that I needed to say, shut up, don't say that to me. That's rude, that's horrible, that's racist. As a black person in a white community, you're forced to just take the abuse and
Shame.
you can't really react the way that you would if you had, brothers and sisters there to support you, where you're like, shut it down. Don't speak to me like that. Grow up. You can't do that out of not just fear of, how people are going to treat you as you're growing up in high school, but also out of fear for your own personal safety. When I would speak out about kids calling me the N-word, the principal would side with the white kids.
Shame.
When I was in high school, there were a handful of us. There were 4 or 5, and I went to the high school in town that was known for its athletics. And in track and field, I hate to bring out stereotypes here, but all of us killed it. So in order for you to qualify for the Northern Provincials, you needed points. And so all of the black kids were turning up, first place, second place, third place for all 3 or 4 of the events that each of us were taking place in. So we were just stacking up points for our school. Our coach took our points and didn't allow any of us to go to the Northern Ontario Provincial.
Shame.
And he said it was because we'd missed practices.
Shame.
So my white mother, mom on a mission as we like to call her, my brother and myself, she went to the school, demanded that he apologize.
Woo!
She demanded that he apologize. She told him that she was going to go to the Nugget, which was our local paper.
Woo!
She, she did everything she could in her power to make sure that I felt like the situation had been rectified. But my coach took our points. Your team can't go if you don't qualify with enough points. So if we weren't going, they didn't qualify, but he kept us off that team. He didn't let any of us go.
Shame.
And all the white kids went to this track and field meet, which was devastating for us.
No.
In university, I became friends with an all-black fraternity, Omega Psi Phi. And in the cafeteria, dark-skinned girls would bully me and another one of my girlfriends who was also light-skinned. And they would yell at us saying, we think we're better than them. We think that they thought that we were going to take their black men. We don't deserve them. We need to step away and stay away. Further distancing us from both myself and my girlfriend from finding a black community for the first times in our lives, because both of us had been raised in white neighborhoods. At clubs, I was fetishized because of my body shape.
Shame.
I became a prize to be achieved. Men would openly tell me that they wanted a black chick under their belt.
Shame.
I've had people fight me because of the color of my skin. I've
Shame.
been nervous to go to job interviews because doing email correspondence, I knew that I was an amazing candidate. And they would show me that they wanted me as the person for the job, and then they would see me and I could see in their eyes I wasn't gonna get it.
Shame.
I knew that I had to work twice as hard. I knew that I had to dress a different way. If you want to go to school, if you want to go get a job, you can wear your hair in braids, but if I do it, it's dirty. It's disgusting. If I want to wear my hair down and curly, it's dirty. It's disgusting. Not allowed. Dress
Shame.
code. I've had people tell me that I speak well for a black person.
Shame.
People constantly ask my nationality. I tell them Canadian. They ask where I'm from. I tell them Holland. I can see the wood burning in their head as they're trying to figure out what in the world, how is this black woman from Holland? Then they ask again where I'm from. Where is my family from? I don't ask you which minority your family colonized. So mind your business.
Woo!
You work in the industry, you work in the service industry, face to face. I can't say that. I have to smile and take it and act like you're not asking me a stupid, ignorant question.
Shame.
I don't understand why it's so important to ask somebody what their ethnicity is. What are you going to gain from that? What information are you pulling from that? Why do you need to know? What's this question for? Stop asking it.
Woo!
Sorry. So in Canada, black people make nearly $15,000 less annually than non-people of color.
Shame.
The unemployment rate for non-people of color is 7.3%. For black people, it's 12.5%.
Shame.
Indigenous women are 12 times more likely to go missing or be murdered than any other demographic.
Shame.
52% of all children in foster care are Indigenous.
Shame.
Indigenous children make up only 7.7% of the population. The Indigenous have been ripped away from their homes and stripped of their languages and histories for eons, like the black people. They've had their land stolen, we've been stolen from ours. In Canada, it's not just a fight for black lives, it's a fight for Indigenous as well. Just because we don't experience racism to the same extent as our brothers and sisters down in the United States, doesn't mean racism hurts us any less. We have to do better as a race, as a human race, to do right by our brothers and sisters.
Woo!
We need to come together and stop this violence, the systematic oppression of our people, before we can truly say all lives matter. Because right now, it's clear that black and Indigenous lives do not matter. So I've got some things that you can do. I know that there are a lot of you that are, as white people or as other people of color, you're trying to figure out what exactly you can do to, contribute to the Black Lives Matter movement here. So the first thing that you can do is donate to mutual aid funds. You can get educated. You should be educating your children. When you were in school, what were you taught? White history. Were you taught Indigenous history? Were you taught black history?
No.
Were you taught about the apartheid?
No.
Were you taught about the European colonization of Africa?
No.
Were you taught about the United States and their slave trade?
No.
These are things that are super important. These are things that everybody needs to be aware of. The reason that racism is continuing the way it does isn't because of everybody being a bad person. It's simply because not enough people are educated in the atrocities that are going on in this world to understand what is happening to us. You need to educate yourself. You need to educate your children. You need to stand up. If you hear your mom, your dad, your cousin say things that are racist, it doesn't matter if you're going to make them uncomfortable. They make people uncomfortable.
Woo!
If nobody's calling out these people and their poor behavior, this continues. This cycle continues. We need to end it. We need to make sure that racism isn't normalized.
Woo!
We need to support justice reform. If you look at government budgets, let's look at Vancouver's, the VBT. Thank you. Exactly. We should be.
Woo!
They've got, I think, $350 million for their budget. They were asked to decrease by 1%. They still have not, and all they've done is beak off.
Shame!
Now let's look at the budget for welfare, for social housing, for the library. They're nothing close to that. Why are we paying so much in taxes to pay for people to be brutalized in the streets, to be brutalized at home, to be murdered while they're sleeping at home? Add your voice to a petition. Every petition that you see, sign it.
Woo!
Who cares? Sign all of them. Sign every single one of them. If you need an American zip code, Google it. Google it. Oh, that's a good one. That's great. Easy. 90210. Hello. Good one, Jen. Get involved with racial justice organizations. Again, that could be as simple as donating, or it could be as simple as reaching out and finding out if you have a local chapter. Obviously up here, local would mean Vancouver, maybe, but again, educating your children. You're never too young to teach your children about racism.
Woo!
Black children, Latino children, Indigenous children, any children of color, learn about racism real young. And it's not because our parents teach us, it's because one day their kid comes home and they say some word that somebody at school has said to them, and their parents have to sit down with their children and explain what that word means and break that child's innocence from a very young age.
Unacceptable!
You can support Black-owned businesses. If you're one of those people who gets uncomfortable with donating to charity because where does that money go? Is it for-profit? Is it non-for-profit? I know I'm one of those people who gets a little edgy. If you're spending money in Black businesses, you're helping grow those communities, and you know where your money is going. It's going directly to a Black person so they can grow their business. Because for years, still to this day, it's hard for us to get funding. We can't get funding. You can go in as a white family with a low income and get a mortgage, but a Black family? Nothing.
Shame!
Again, contact your representatives. Google them if you don't know. Not all this stuff is common knowledge. Just Google. All the effort that you take messaging all your Black friends and people of color to ask them all these questions, use the same effort to use Google search.
Woo!
You're gonna ask us, what can I read? How can I educate myself? Type that into Google. How can I educate myself on Black information, Black history? Simple. We're busy grieving. I can't get through my Facebook or my Instagram without watching a Black person die almost daily.
Shame!
Photos, videos. When was the last time that you saw a video on your Facebook or Instagram of a white person being murdered in cold blood in the streets and known full well that those cops would not come to justice? We experience that daily. So we're going to have a moment of silence. Before we have the moment of silence, I'd just like to read off some names that we're going to be silent for. These are names of people who have been murdered by police and police have received next to nothing: a slap on the wrist, a suspension with pay. John Crawford III, Dante Hamilton, Dante Parker, Eric Harris. Sorry, this is really hard to read. Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, Walter Scott, Ayanna Jones, Sandra Bland, Freddie Gray, Jonathan Farrell, Corin Gaines, Jamar Clark, Rika Boyd, Alton Sterling, Breonna Taylor, who would have turned 26 yesterday. 27, my bad, sorry. Akai Grewley, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, George Floyd. You need to say their names. You need to say their names, and you need to seek justice for these people and their families, because they're not getting any. So let's have a moment of silence. Again, I'd like to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I'm sure I speak for every person of color here, from the bottom of their hearts as well. It means so much to see so many of you come here to support us and this movement that we're going through right now, which is the largest civil rights movement in the history of the world.
Woo!
We need for this to not be another hashtag. We need for this to be something that we're continually fighting for. When everybody gets their jobs back and all this corona stuff is over and finished, we need to keep fighting for this, because it's not just gonna go away.
Woo!
We don't need the government thinking that because they finally arrested those 4 police officers, that all of this is gonna change. It's not enough.
Woo!
We need to keep the conversations going at our houses, at home with our families, out in the streets, in shops. Whenever you see something wrong, speak up. This needs to be a cultural change. We can't just let this be another hashtag, for real. It's gotta keep going, because this isn't gonna end. Black people are gonna keep getting persecuted. Indigenous people are gonna keep getting persecuted, and every other race. We need to stand together and fight, and thank you all so much for coming and being a part of that.